This podcast, The Good, the Bad and the Vagina, is brought to you by me, Tess Lovely, a retired midwife, birth keeper, mother and sovereign woman. The views shared are my own and those of my guests. If something doesn't resonate, release it. It's not meant to upset or offend. If you feel discomfort, please seek support for your own healing. If you don't like what you hear, don't listen. This space honours truth, freedom and expression, protected under the rights to free speech. Welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Vagina. Let's get started. Here we are. Good morning, Liz. Welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Vagina. And I'm really excited to have you here today. Let me just tell you a little bit about Liz. Liz is a mother of 2 teenage children. She is also a psychotherapist and has a master in psychology, which her dissertation's centred around postnatal depression in women and things like that, but we'll talk about that a little bit. And she's a therapeutic youth worker. But what I really want to tell you is about how I met Liz, because we haven't known each other that long. I'm in a group called Busy Women, and it's just like a little networking group. And then one day on the mental wellbeing day that was a couple of weeks ago, Liz, who I'd never met before, had put into the group, anybody wanting a hug, I'm around and about. And I went, I'll have a hug. So we arranged to meet at Babbacombe Downs and we went for a walk and we just kind of hit it off. It was just like one of those moments where you meet somebody and you just think, I feel like I've known her all my life. And so the next thing, obviously, I was starting The Good, the Bad and the Vagina. It was just a natural invitation for me to offer to Liz. And I am so pleased and happy and delighted to have you here because you've got such an intriguing life and journey to get to where you are today. So yeah, tell us about who you are, Liz, your mothering journey and your professional journey. Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Tess. Who am I? Oh, that's a big question. Well, obviously from my accent, you can hear I'm not from the UK. So I was born and raised in Canada, and I came over when I was 21 and followed the love trail, and yeah. Ended up kind of staying in Southeast England for a little while before coming down to the Southwest and kind of settling here with my now ex. But we were together for a really long time, 22 years. And over that time, I was just kind of trying to figure things out for myself, really. So I ended up working for M&S, Marks and Spencer, and ended up becoming an HR payroll and admin manager and covered the whole of the Southwest for all the stores there. And during that time, we actually struggled to have kids. And so we went down the IVF journey over 10 years, trying for a baby and all the stresses that entails, the highs and the lows, the jabbing and jabbing full of drugs and putting weight on and thinking you're pregnant and then not pregnant. And a lot of that is quite a quiet journey because it's not something that you kind of flaunt and tell everyone about. So my firstborn is actually an IVF baby, born at Torbay Hospital, which was a wonderful experience. Actually, I had a great midwife who seemed to intuit what I needed and kind of went with the flow and trying lots of different things. And actually, I look back on that whilst you're going through an incredible amount of pain. I actually look back on that in a favorable light because she just got me. And thankfully, Libby was healthy. And obviously, then you start the journey of motherhood, which is a whole other life change and a half. And then trying for another one because thought it would be nice to have 2. Really struggled with that once again. We had frozen embryos, so we tried IVF a couple times again, unsuccessfully. And then my son came along naturally. As soon as I became pregnant, I had like a bulging disc in my back and really struggled to walk. So I couldn't stand upright for most of my pregnancy. I was like literally bent over with the toddler, still going out and about, but still in an incredible amount of pain. So I was on morphine and various other drugs to kind of try and deal with that. And then when my son came along, I kind of went into the throes of postnatal depression, which I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought, I think I was potentially had like a low grade depression right the way through. Once my son came along, it just kind of hit me even more because I had the toddler and breastfeeding and trying to do stuff and couldn't. And once again, the highs and lows of motherhood. So if you are a mom out there, you know what I mean. Lots of things that kind of like slap you in the face going, oh my God, that just happened. Especially involving lots of poo and sick and stuff. um, which I'm quite happy to be over the worst of that stage now. So yeah, kind of grappling with postnatal depression alongside learning to have a relationship with the pain that I was experiencing. Once again, a private journey because I really felt like I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. And so that included my husband at the time. And so I just kind of soldiered on. And, whilst people around me could see I was in a lot of pain, going, are you okay? Because I was literally bent over a lot of the time carrying toddlers. And I'm like, yep, I'm all right. So kind of walking and learning about myself throughout that whole time. And that pain journey lasted 7 years before I was finally came off the extensive medication that I was on. Some of the medication was actually had to do with focusing on nerve pain. So I had root blocks and things like that kind of investigated to see what the cause was. So the medication that I was on was actually an SSRI as well. So they were well, you have postnatal depression, so and you're on the right meds essentially, but I still felt horrible. But I think my internal drive as a newish mom just kind of forced me ahead really, and the internal grit that I had, I think. And also there were certain things that later on when I did my dissertation, I reflected back and realized actually I was doing things that were helping myself and helping my mental health, and I didn't even realize it. So doing things like forcing myself to get out every day, no matter how I felt, rain or shine, I just needed to get out, even if it was just for an hour with my kids. That was actually, I think, looking back, a saving grace to kind of shift my environment and to kind of have a different type of engagement, social engagement with people. So I was helping myself without even realizing it. Throughout that journey, I just ended up, changes within M&S meant that I was made redundant, but I stayed on as a manager and then decided to leave once I started to study for a degree and then eventually a master's. So alongside that, I did work, I volunteered, and I was also a parent. So what I thought was interesting that I was quite pleased that I could focus my studies on the postnatal depression side of things. Um, I didn't actually mention about the birth of my second born, my son, because that was actually quite impactful for me because I was on such strong meds, the morphine and various other bits. Obviously, the midwife and doctors were concerned for me and wanted to make sure the baby was okay because they didn't really know if he was all right. And so that whole experience was really upsetting for me because throughout the time in hospital, I was having quick contractions. So I that's how it was with my first one. So I'd have like a 30-second break and then go into another contraction. So over time, that's incredibly, incredibly draining and tiring over hours. They gave me like some diamorphine to try and slow that process down, which it did, but then it makes you feel sick. And then they strapped me up, and I didn't want to be strapped up because felt like I needed to move around. and kind of move my body with how I was feeling the pain. So I was confined to a bed, and and the midwife just sat looking at the screen, monitoring the baby, even though I was in agony, and there wasn't any connection that I felt with the midwife, which added to my angst because it felt quite solitary, apart from my husband who was with me, but still, it felt quite like a solitary experience. And there was just like a breakdown in communication. I don't know how, because I'm quite empathetic, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on with this person, even though I'm the one who's going through the contractions. Like, this doesn't feel right. Then they wheel in an incubator, and I was kind of like, what's going on? They weren't telling me that there were concerns with my son. And then doctor comes in, and a couple other people, and it's kind of like, okay, is this something that I need to be worried about? Or and then being forced to put my feet in the stirrups, and you've got to stay in this position, you can't move. And so it ended up just being like, right, let's just get through this now, because I'm done with this experience. And once again, thankfully, my son was healthy, and there wasn't the need for the concern, albeit we stayed in hospital for another like 5 days or so, just to monitor him because of the amount of drugs I was on during pregnancy, to see if there were any addicted behaviors coming out from him. Thankfully, everything was okay. But it's quite interesting in meeting yourself, Tess, and then just seeing how our experiences can, and I've got like an example of two experiences that were totally and completely different, how the approach of a midwife can make all the difference with the experience. When you feel like you're being looked after and you have a feeling of safety, then there's more freedom of expression, freedom to just center. I was able to center myself and focus on my own process, instead of a disconnect between the midwife and myself, where I'm kind of left wondering, and then starting to worry and thinking, should I be worried? Whilst my second birth thankfully wasn't like an extended period of time, I think it was maybe about 6 hours, so it's quite quick all in all. But condensing that time down, it was really intense, and it's quite refreshing, engaging in that conversation, and just saying how important that experience is for a mom and for the baby, because you're bringing baby into a world where you want them to feel a level of safety from their mom and dad, and not one of panic and anxiety and worry. That's quite an interesting dialogue to be had.
Well, there's quite a lot just to unpick on that, and I will talk about
Sorry.
your no, it's amazing. I do want to talk about your work that you did with postnatal depression as well. Just listening to your births at that moment, and just hearing the difference of how your first time entering into it, and it was amazing that you had a brilliant experience on your first birth at Torbay Hospital. That was so good. Considering all the challenges that you faced getting pregnant, coming out with a really positive experience like that must have really enabled you entering into the parenting arena to feel, actually, I've got this now. I don't know if it did that. First time mums, there's a massive thing about everything's new and it's first, and there's so many people telling you what's the right thing to do, what you should and shouldn't do. But eventually you find your own groove if you're in a place where you can get into that groove. And having gone through an IVF journey, that's a whole subject on its own. That's in the fact that you said it was quite a lonely journey, and then entering into parenthood as a first-time mum, and then the comparison then to being an experienced mum, but then feeling completely disempowered. That's big stuff there. That's big stuff going on there. So I think if we start with just to give some insight to some mums who may have shared an IVF journey or maybe on an IVF journey. Let's just have a little unpick in and around that, about how that experience was for you, what sort of thoughts came up, how you processed those thoughts, how did it make you feel? And a question I'd like to ask is, do you think that because the birth was positive, that actually enabled you to move into parenthood a little easier?
I think bearing in mind that This is quite a long time ago. Well, it'll be like over 20 years ago now. Reflecting on the feeling of loneliness. And it's quite a slow journey as well, because day in, day out, you have to like get the timings right. There's a lot of communication to and from GPs, consultants, travel. There was Plymouth, Exeter. We ended up going to Bath Hospital to see consultants. And there's a lot of questioning. So, questioning, am I doing this right? Am I eating right? Everything becomes kind of hyper focused on getting a result, the result that you want, which obviously increases the pressure. And then they tell you, but you can't stress because stress will diminish the likelihood of you getting pregnant. And so you're then trying to think, well, how do I not stress about this? Bearing in mind that also working, juggling. I wasn't juggling family life at the time, but still putting my all in at work, the amount of hours, and then also needing to take time off in order to rest post treatment, and also not forgetting that actually you're messing with your hormones. Emotions and everything are kind of all over the place. Never mind getting through, there's a lot of practical stuff to be had as well. So understanding your own cycle and then injecting with different meds and making sure that it's all the right meds. You're like, so it's like all very calculated and very scientific approach, which in my 20s, that was not me at all. I mean, since going to uni, I mean, I've refined that skill, but back then it didn't come naturally to me. So that even in and of itself was a stressor. But I think equally psychologically, it weighs heavy because growing up, I never really thought much about having kids. But when I turned my attention to that, that really became a desire and a want. And at the time, I had a faith in God. I was really praying hard, kind of going and then wondering what's wrong, and then not trying to think that, not necessarily being punished, but something wrong with me, because you're looking around at everyone else and kind of like, oh, great, my best mate's just got pregnant. Oh, I'm really happy for you, sink of heart. That kind of dilemma as well, where you're really genuinely wanting to cheer on your friends and colleagues in their life experience, but in the meantime struggling with your own. And I also remember, I haven't thought about this in years actually, but I distinctly remember someone at work accidentally getting pregnant, and they were really open with me about it. It was a private conversation, and they were contemplating abortion and talking me through this. And I had been going through my process, and I decided that best to not share that, but equally to kind of be kind of like a balanced approach for her to kind of weigh up pros and cons. And in the end, she kept her baby, but it was that even that process is quite hard. I had this inner battle going on, and then kind of seeing life play out, and out of my control, as it were. A lot of that element is out of my control. The IVF process, you really are feel like you're in control. Right, today I'm doing this. I'm getting my peak optimum body to be ready, but you be ready, uterus. You can do it, and all this sort of thing. And then to be let down continuously. So yeah, it certainly builds on a level of resilience that you don't ask for.
I was going to say as well, in your 20s, I felt like this, but I'm sure a lot of women will resonate this. You feel quite invincible. So when you're then presented
Mhm.
with something that tells you actually you're not quite as invincible as you think you are, it's hard to get your head around that. And then when somebody's standing in front of you who doesn't want to be pregnant but is, that's like a double whammy, like smack in the face kind of an emotional thing that you've got to deal with. And at 20, you deal with things so much differently in your 40s than you do in your 30s. So in
Yeah.
20, that must have been incredibly difficult. And 20 years ago, there wasn't the facilities like there are now. There aren't as many avenues that you can go down and talk to people. Even the fact that you now do psychotherapy, if you look back at 20 years ago, there were probably half as many counsellors, psychotherapists, and all of those available services there. And the journey of IVF, the person that's giving you that treatment is going in and doing a job, and they're being kind and as compassionate as they can. But ultimately, they go home and forget about you. But it consumes you.
Mm.
IVF consumes you. Getting pregnant consumes you. And then being pregnant consumes you from a woman's perspective. It's just so powerful, this journey can be. Did you find it was like that for you? Did you find it just was like everything that you ate, breath, walked, saw, heard was just either getting pregnant or being pregnant?
It really became that way. It was my life. That became the sole focus as well. And we did try and do things to kind of help to reduce stress and things like that. But ultimately, when something like that is, effectively it was hanging over my head. And it was that way for the both of us, it's being asked kind of like, why isn't this happening? And it was unexplained for me. So there wasn't anything that was, this is the reason why you can't get pregnant. There wasn't anything like that. So so that kind of added to the question mark of what else could it be. So yes, very much all consuming. But thankfully, I had friends and family that were here, not my Canadian family, um, that were really supportive, and that's where that kind of gets you through too. So even though they may not have understood my full journey, they were still there, understood in the basics, as it were, of what was going on. And I have a couple of sisters. One of them who was at a similar stage to me, but just like a couple of years ahead. And she had gone through the IVF journey. She was able to help guide to a certain degree, um, and help with knowledge and encouragement and things like that. And whilst it was a solitary experience, there were still people around that were kind of bolstered me, I guess.
So you go in and you have this amazing experience where you connected with your midwife, which made my heart leap with joy. I love it when I hear women have these wonderful connections with their midwives. I do believe it's a bit of a postcode lottery going in when you have your baby, as you've experienced with your second birth. But you go in and you have this amazing experience. How did that impact on you, do you think, compared to your journey of getting pregnant?
I didn't really see it as a comparison, to be honest. It was just kind of something that I went through. By the time she came, it was beautiful in the end because I was standing, I was walking down the corridor, I was all over the place, not being distracting to anyone else, but I was moving, which I something that I innately felt like I needed to do. And in the end, I gave birth to my daughter on a birthing stool, which is not something that I had even, it was the midwife who directed me. She's like, I know, let's try this, kind of putting me in different positions. So she was kind of getting me really. And in the end, she was literally laying on the floor. And basically caught my daughter. So I was able to just look down and just see her there. And what was so like impactful for me was my daughter, she pretty much started crying straight away. And I said something to her. Just said like hi to her, and she stopped and just looked right at me. It's one of those things where you really do forget about everything else. So it's only on reflection, and because I had nothing to compare it to, it was just like a first experience for me. You're kind of reliant on being led by by the professional, and I wasn't one that would be like, no, I want to do it this way, I want to do it that way. I'm a bit more kind of like go with the flow. I'll just see what I do, and really not knowing what to expect. A lot of things kind of dwindle and kind of go in the background then, because I believe that the midwife was intuiting my process, so it felt very natural to the point where I didn't need to reflect, because it just happened as it was meant to happen, if that makes sense.
Which, when you compare to your second experience, entering into that birth arena your second time, you obviously had all of that uncomfortableness with your back, and that would have impacted on physically how well you managed, mentally how well you managed, and also when we become a mum, the level of guilt that comes along on that badge that we wear. So if you're
Yeah.
physically unable to do a lot of the things that you're wanting to do, you feel bad about it as a mum. But it was interesting that you said on that journey, I picked up that you masked quite a lot of how you were feeling. Do you want to kind of explore a little bit or explain a little
Do
bit
you
around
mean
that for me?
do you mean masking my pain or
Masking the whole thing about how you were feeling about it. That's what the impression I got, that you mask the pain, and if you're masking pain, then you're kind of probably masking how you're really feeling. And
yeah.
it's masking is something women do an awful lot.
Well, and this is something that was, equally covered in my research. We look at others around us as being the pinnacle of perfection, I guess. Outside looking in, your life looks great. Based on that level of comparison, lack of normalization of women's experience, we end up hiding behind this mask of, I'm okay too. Don't worry about me. I've got this. And that can happen to varying levels. A lot of that can also sometimes, the thicker the mask that we wear, it could be because we have less support at home. We have less support socially. So there's a lot of dynamics going on between just, I'm going to put on a mask today. A lot of societal pressure of how we should look, how we should behave, how we should present to ourselves, which is even more extreme nowadays. It's been progressively gotten more extreme. There were varying reasons why I felt like I needed to wear a mask. Part of it was because of my own expectation. So, expectation for myself, because I needed to be a certain way in order to be a good mom. And even though struggling with these things, there's like an internal grappling, um, but without the external vent, as it were. So over the course of time, that kind of builds up, and to the point where it can show up in mental health issues. It can show up in physical pain as well. And I think part of my back issue was also down to high levels of stress that I was under, a relationship that I wasn't happy in, as well as striving to be a good mom, as well as working, as well as taking care of the home, and in an unsuccessful way. So not feeling like I'm high performing. So what I'm saying is that there can be an internal level of bar or expectation that can also be put in place by myself. And then the external influence kind of reinforces that, or the other way around. Who knows? I don't know, chicken and egg scenario. But it's just kind of like it's multi-dimensional and complex, and I don't think that you can kind of narrow it down to one. This is why I was this way, because there's so many external influences that we all grapple with.
That's a really interesting level of understanding. So thank you for sharing all of that. That's quite incredible. For people that are listening, they might that will really help with some of the pennies dropping, I think, for them. Because I know certainly for me, I was fortunate when I had my three older children. When I had Amber, it made parenting really easy. She was like gifted to me, and that part always seemed quite a natural progression for me, like a natural place to sit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, but again, like you, in a relationship where where I wasn't happy, and then but I just masked that. I just parked that because I didn't want that to be part of who and what I was. I wanted to be this really amazing mum and put all my energy into doing that. So the complexities that underlie the way that our family structures are quite incredible, aren't they? When you had that pregnancy and you had the challenges that faced with your second child, you then gave birth, and that experience wasn't as positive as the first one. But it almost feels like it was a volcano bubbling around that was about to go pop.
I mean, I don't know if this is another chicken and egg scenario too, because my pregnancy was quite a challenging one anyway, where I was constantly pushing through pain. And at that point, I would say that I didn't have the relationship with pain as I understood it now to then. So I was constantly hating that I was in pain. And so that battle then kind of translated then into that room in the hospital where I was, I'm hating this. I do not like this. Can you get me out of this strap? And then to be told no, because we have to keep an eye on baby because baby's the one that, we're concerned about. Um, and and then that kind of level of angst was translated throughout. It was compounded by the fact that the midwife wasn't very communicative at a time when I really just need, because I'm one that actually really likes to know what's going on. So even in the dentist, I'm like, what are you doing? Tell me exactly what you're doing. Like I like to know because it helps me to kind of follow the process and kind of work with someone instead of like shock factor. I don't want any surprises. I like to just kind of know and then I can deal with that as I go. The not knowing, the lack of communication had put like a barrier up between me and the midwife that was there. And then other midwives coming in and out. And there was a lot of like different types of commotion going on and all these things. I didn't really understand what was happening apart from I couldn't move. And then I was being sick because I don't know if it was the meds or the pain. I Who knows, which also is something that I hate doing. And then it's like messy. Oh, it's okay. And then back into contractions and the pain level from that regard as well. Thankfully, I just look back and think, yeah, great, everything turned out okay. Even though it was a horrible experience, something that I really don't want to repeat, and I won't because I'm not having another one. And it's more just thinking about I chose to. Instead of focusing on what had happened, I just decided to kind of like, okay, at least it's a good result. I can now move on with taking care of little one, focusing on baby, sacrificing my own experience, which as a mom, that's part of the life change that you go through is sacrificing who you are, what you think, who you think you are in those moments. So it's like a constant kind of peeling away of like, okay, I don't need that for my life. Okay, I don't need that for my life. And you kind of learn to and grieve what you lose for a better purpose for your child. And that's the whole parent paradox, isn't it? You sacrifice your own happess for that of someone else, and no question about it either.
That's quite incredible that as women we do that. It's in the ether of the air, in the historical places of where we've come from, with the patriotic sort of historical energy coming in. But I believe that women, we put ourselves right down here on our pecking order of everybody else comes in, and then if there's anything left over, we'll gratefully and humbly receive it. Part of what my mission within the giving birth back to women, which is what birth from within is to get women to put themselves higher up on that rung so that they're up here, and they present themselves, yes, obviously relentlessly, and give your self over to your child because that's part of becoming a mother, but everybody else goes right down and you stay up there with your baby.
On the back of that, Tess, it's more about actually, if you're putting yourself first and valuing who you are, then actually everyone else gets a better version of you anyway. So everyone else is going to benefit as well as yourself,
Yeah.
instead of the continual self sacrifice, which can then lead to resentment on top of poor habits that over time then have, we see it then in our physicality. And so actually it's really important, what you're doing is actually to see the value, the extreme and precious value that each woman has in their own home as a
Oh,
mom.
that's like music to my ears hearing you say that. Honestly, it really is. That's kind of such a big thing for me. I was really interested in how you, one of the conversations that we had when we went for a walk was about your pain, about the pain that you were in. And it was really interesting picking out then what you said about how you hated the pain and how you then had to learn to understand, learn to live with or accept or love the pain. And
Mhm.
I'm quite interested in that transitional part of how that occurred because you were in pain for many, many, many years. It sounds like it was almost like an identity of you for part of your life. How did you transition from one thing to the other?
Once again, it's a personal evolution. One is kind of like recognizing and becoming aware of my attitude towards my pain. So like I would wake up in the morning, sometimes having restless nights, wake up and I couldn't move. So I would literally roll out of bed and then get into like a fetal position on the floor, and then have to sit like that for, I don't know, 10-15 minutes in order to just move slightly, to just kind of get some feeling in and kind of breathe. And over time I would then start to breathe into it, because over things that I was be exposed to, and some of the work that I'm doing at the moment is like triggering your reticular activating system, so where your focus goes, energy flows. And I started to learn things about the body and kind of try and work it out. Like, why am I still in pain? What can I do to help myself? Over time, I would then start to breathe into the pain. I would still be angry at the pain. Like, why are you still here? I hate you. I hate this. I hate, having to be in pain. I've got to move, baby's crying. Force myself, force myself, force myself. And then over time, learning about self compassion, understanding that actually I can be kind to myself, not try to push myself so hard all the time. And I was then kind of started to look into movement. So then looking at spending more time doing yoga, stretching, that sort of thing, where you then kind of aligning your mind and your body, actually talking to the pain. So recognizing that actually this is my body kind of crying out, which is what the body does. It talks to you saying, something's not right. And we need to kind of pay attention to our bodies and listen and be like, okay, let's work together. Maybe I need to make some adjustments in order to help myself. And sometimes our body can sense things and picks things up before our brain does, or our brain bypasses these things like stress or other things going on for us. And during that time, as I mentioned, with having the postnatal depression, another thing that really helped me, that I'd heard from somewhere else, who knows where, was to actually talk to my sadness as I was going through it. And I would actually just acknowledge it and say, hello, sadness. So when I'm feeling low, even now, I'll just say, hello, sadness. And I feel like a shift happen within me, where I can allow it to be there. I can allow the pain to be there and not be angry at it. And it causes more ease, really. So the body can relax a little, I guess. Instead of being all tense and inflamed all the time, it starts to relax. And so once again, multifaceted, multi-dimensional, The pain has kind of shifted, and I still have a weakness there, but I'm able to do so many more things now than what I ever was able to do. So that's why I call it like it's a pain journey. It's not something like that I saw as like part of my identity, and yet it was a part of me that needed addressing.
You have worked so hard, and it's amazing the results. Because seeing you when I first met you, I wouldn't have ever envisaged that you had any issue with severe back problems like you explained. So that is an incredible journey that's unfolded for you. That kind of then leads into understanding all about that pain and how you managed it and the impact that it had on your mental health and your physicality. You then going into the getting a degree in psychology and becoming a psychotherapist. And was that all part of the journey that unfolded? Was that quite a mindful step into that journey, or was it a journey that just came and unfolded?
I unfolded is a good word. I think there was nothing premeditated about it. Uh, and it was literally one day I went to the uni center at our local college. Just thought I would have a look to see what courses were available. And so I managed to walk into this guy sat in the office, and I just had a frank conversation. I didn't realize that he actually was like head of the uni. Found that out afterwards, and then thought about it for a little while, and then enrolled. And that really was a time when I really started to um, do something for myself. And psychology was always something that I enjoyed and excelled in my studies, and always found intriguing. And I love understanding people and getting to know people. So yes, it was quite an evolution, really. I didn't have an end goal of being a psychotherapist or even working with young people. I didn't even know what I was going to do. So I'm one of those people that's kind of like not as directive in their life saying, I'm going to be this. It's just kind of evolved into where I am presently. And yeah, and so using the degree to kind of have a look then in a reflective element of looking at postnatal depression, something that I went through. Was lucky enough to volunteer at Bluebell, which is a registered charity based in Bristol, and they had a local group that that met for moms called Mums Comfort Zone. And this is where the women who postnatally were recognized to have depression or anxiety. And so they were enrolled on like an 11-week course where they went through different topics and got together. It was like 2 hours a week, and with a creche provided, they were able to have some time away from their young people and just get together with other moms. And so to be able to use that as a platform to research and to see how their depression and anxiety levels decreased over that time, so pre and post the course. That was my first dissertation, to show that actually there was a significant reduction. And then for my master's, I went back and explored why that was. So actually spoke to some of the mums and to understand what was most impactful of their time whilst taking the course to help to support their mental health.
What was the most standout thing that you thought that really helped mums with postnatal depression? That was the thing that was the most helpful aspect of all of that for them.
You're wanting to narrow down a whole dissertation on one word?
Somebody who did all that reading and research, there'd be something inside of you that would go, do you know what? If they all just did this, or if we could just do that for them, just one, there would be one thing that you think that for me is the most beneficial.
Yeah, I think just the fact that they got together. So
Yeah.
regardless of what was going on for them, because by meeting each other face to face in a room, good, the bad, the ugly, it wasn't down to looks. It was just kind of, here I am, I haven't slept last night and this is sucky. out comes the validation of this is hard. It's hard being able to empathize and have that peer input, and then also to be around people that are one stage ahead of you or have been through it, and be able to say, this isn't forever, guys. This is really sucky at the moment, but actually, you will get through this. And normalizing the experience. So saying, yeah, I did that too. Yeah, that happened to me too. Realizing that you're not going crazy inside your own four walls. It actually is a joint experience. But all of that wouldn't have happened had they not got together and met up and just spent time together.
Over the last sort of 20 years, a huge shift in isolation for women. There are groups, there are mums and tots groups, but they tend to focus more around the baby. I run a space called Mum Space, and it is literally for the mums. There are a few toys there for the babies. They tend to be quite wholesome toys, but the whole point of it is that we sit and we share a space and a time, and we do a bit of mindfulness. I bring a theme in just to get the ball rolling on a morning, and I find it quite wholesome because it's about the mums, and there's not much out there for mums. I also do the dads group as well, as you know, and that's because there's not much out there for dads. But I feel like our community has been chopped up, broken up, and split up, and we don't have our village anymore like we had historically. I knew you were going to eventually get to that point where you could probably pin it down to the point of the socialisation, the fact that they were coming together, they weren't isolated, they weren't alone, they were validated, their feelings were validated, and what they were experiencing was real. And that's where I feel that we're sitting. There's a big hole out there for women now. But did you find that when you were doing your psychology?
My research kind of delved into kind of the ins and outs of that. That's where my knowledge is. When I mentioned about from a personal perspective of getting out every day, some of that was to moms and toddler groups, and forcing myself to be social and to see different faces. And a lot of that was done sometimes meeting friends, sometimes it was just turn up. I agree with you, kind of focused on the child, and then you'd kind of get in and amongst all those interruptions. You'd have like part of conversations that were never really completed usually. So we'd have a joke of like, drink your drink while it's hot, like have a drink now while they're playing, because that's kind of endemic of motherhood, isn't it? You make a really nice hot drink, I'm really looking forward to that, and then you come back to it and it's cold. So it's quite interesting to hear you talk about actually shifting the focus and the importance of the value and the attention going on the mum as the primary focus, as opposed to the child being the primary.
It's so true, isn't it? If you can meet your needs primarily, then people are getting a better version of yourself. It's such a topsy-turvy place in where we live. Our self-worth as women has been so low down on the spectrum of life that it's hard to put our needs first. We become massive people pleasers, and that's a whole subject in itself in psychology, isn't it? People pleasing. Your work in and around postnatal depression with women, because I think it's huge in today's society. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the suicide rate for mums postnatally is risen by 17% in the last 2 years. And the level of depression is hugely increased, and the level of dissatisfaction from their pregnancies, their birth experience, their transitions into motherhood has become like quite massive. And I think women are beginning to realise that this isn't quite right. But the more that these services people need, that it's almost the more they're withdrawn. And there's a huge, vast gap of mums that are really struggling with their mental well-being, because there's an element around that they feel they've failed. The stigma that there's sort of still attached.
Feeling like you're a failure as a person as well, even though you're not supported by any other scaffolding means, which actually is needed. We don't, you touched on it earlier, we don't have that village. There's more disparity, there's more increased isolation, and within that, it's a heavy burden to bear. You're saying about that increased 17% being increasingly so. Incredibly sad.
And I think with social media depicting the perfect image of what motherhood is all about, it's the consumerism that's attached around motherhood. For me, I find really it's quite an upsetting factor for me, because it takes away the essence. And none of that matters. Like when your baby's born, it doesn't care what pushchair it goes in. It doesn't care what the cot it looks like. It doesn't care what the nursery looks like. The only thing it's interested in is its basic needs, which is being loved and being fed and watered and staying warm and dry. But the consumerism of this event and the money that's attached to how much money can we make out of this journey, for women and their families, is astronomical. And then the focus shifts from the internal being into the external being. And that, I believe, that's where the discord and the dissatisfaction and the disconnection all comes from. And it's kind of like, trying to get people to kind of refocus back in here and start building the blocks in here, because then that'll all fall into place, all that other stuff. I don't know where we go forward with that and how that's achieved, but I think that's the movement that I want to get going, is to get women to really focus on this internal stuff rather than the external stuff, because I think it would make a massive difference to their health and well-being.
I agree. I think there's an incredible push towards how things look on the external. What clothes your baby is wearing. It's got to be the up and coming style fashion, which is like huge cost. Like you say, with prams and things like that. And a lot of families are struggling with the day to day, then actually it's unachievable. So then to see your social status decline and to feel like you're not fitting in then into today's society, and on top of lack of sleep, trying to meet your needs, make sure baby's putting on enough weight, not killing each other at home, like all these things, trying to keep your baby alive, basically. Is an incredible burden to bear. And if you don't have anyone to kind of share that load, then it's going to have huge impact on mental health.
One of the things that I find a lot of women talk about with me is that even though they go to work, they've got their career, then they leave work and they're then on a basic maternity pay, how disempowering that puts them in their bases of relations. Not intentionally, but I think it's like on a deep psychology, because importance is attached to monetary value. It makes women feel that when they're not bringing in that value of money, that suddenly they're lowered again on the sort of the value of the gauge. I always say that suffragettes didn't throw themselves under the horse to get the vote. They threw themselves under the horse because they wanted women to be seen as equal. And what they wanted was that their job of raising children, being a homekeeper, whatever it was seen equally as important as what a man did. But because the importance was attributed to money and financial income, we never quite achieved that. And I always think, well, you get up in the morning and you do stuff all day long that contributes to the well-being and the functioning of your house, whatever that is. All of those jobs are important. They're equally of value. Just because one goes and brings the money in, it doesn't mean to say that the other one isn't as important. It's about how, as a unit, we function together and the value. If I put on 2 loads of washing in the day, that's more valuable or equally as valuable as my husband going out and earning the money, because without that washing being done, it's like one of the cogs in the machine isn't working.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping the routine going, keeping the house going, making sure baby sleeps. All these things are a huge focus and take a lot of time and energy. Fortunately, it's a slow shift, but it is a shift that is happening because you do see more men nowadays than what they did 20 years ago looking after the primary care of baby. Um, so that's encouraging to see. It's a very slow shift because there still is a disparity between even maternity, paternity leave. It's still recognized that it's more a mother's responsibility to be at home, to kind of take care of those basics. And some of that is purely functional, particularly if mum is breastfeeding, then actually she needs to be around. Societally, we're talking about the West here, is actually that's kind of where priorities lay. So we're kind of this is where we're getting into the multi layers complexity of why we can feel the way that we do because of the societal order that is in play. I believe it's helpful to look at the broader scope of influence instead of, because it helps to alleviate the personal pressure. Why am I putting myself under so much pressure? Oh, okay, because I've just watched 5 reels of this mom who's got it all together and has everything in perfect routine and she looks fabulous. Oh, that's great. Is that why I feel shit right now? Or is it because I've just spoken to a friend who's just celebrated the next best thing that she's got in her house and I haven't been able to afford this for my house. And so the comparative value is always taking place from within, but then we've also got the societal influence happening as well. So it's helpful because for me it helps to alleviate the pressure that I put on myself and just kind of think, okay, there's more going on than just what's in between my ears.
As a newly becoming mum, towards the end of your pregnancy, you could go back and meet that person and say, right, Liz, listen to this. This is going to make your life so much easier. Take it on board, apart from the fact that you go in and say, look, I love you and everything is going to be okay, because that's essentially what we should all be saying to ourselves every day.
Mhm.
What piece of advice would you have given the woman that was becoming a mother, Liz?
I there it's hard because I then start to like self analyze and all that sort of thing. But for me personally, and I touched on this earlier, is about just be kind to myself and to probably just slow it down and to cherish each moment as opposed to kind of like, okay, I got that done. Right. What's the next? What's the next? What's the next? So that I think that inner drive. Um, but equally on the back of that, if my future self had come and told me that, I think I would have only taken that on board experientially. So someone telling me that at that time would be like, "Oh yeah, okay, thanks."
Yeah,
Learn that experientially because then that actually has the value for me.
yeah.
So yeah, sorry if it's not the perfect answer.
It's your perfect answer. There is no right or wrong answer. That's what I love about these sorts of things. They're just the authenticity of who we are as human beings, the flaws. We are absolutely 100% beautifully, perfectly flawed. Isn't that amazing that we
Yeah,
can be like that, that there isn't any right or wrong answer? And if that's anything that I can get over in a message in these sort of podcasts, that's something I want to get over to women is just be. Just be whoever you are, but be it brilliant and be it boldly and own it, and don't worry about what everybody else is going on about, and don't let that external clatter come into your internal space and rock your boat and make you feel that you're not good enough or you're inadequate, because you are exactly in the time and space that you're meant to be in, and some days those are going to be good days and some days they're not going to be such good days, but that not good day will pass like the good days pass. We can't walk around in this utopic state all the time.
No, and I actually listening to you speak, I think nowadays, so like 20 years ago, I can say be kinder to yourself, Liz. You be, everything will be okay. But if I was a mom nowadays, I think actually the importance of tempering the amount of time that you listen to the news, tempering the amount of time that you spend online looking at other people. So becoming a bit more attuned to your reactions to different levels of input are actually really valuable. So, for instance, I mentioned about like scrolling and seeing 5 reels of perfect mom, and then noticing how that makes you feel. If there's an element where you start to feel a bit low on the back of that, then it's, you can recognize then that actually that's probably not healthy for you to spend that amount of time online kind of looking. You might want to adjust and influence your algorithm to bring in some more uplifting things that are going to be help with that scaffolding that we talked about earlier, that's going to be supportive, that's going to help you throughout the day, not make you feel like you're not meeting expectation, you're not succeeding as a mom, because there's always something better that we can do. It's always. But recognizing that you're doing your best in each moment, even in your tiredness, you're in your low energy level, 5 and 1 million things that still need to be done, heaps of washing, whatever it is, there's always more we could do. But actually, in each moment, if you're doing your best and acknowledging that, then there's a level of self approval that can come in. So it's just being aware of what you're feeding yourself internally. And that means kind of like regular check-ins with yourself. Like, okay, I've just spent some time online. Yeah, I feel a bit shit right now. Okay, well, one, that's probably not healthy for me to do. And then also, how then now can I counteract that? You know, to try and bring some joy, bring some a positive influence into my life so that I can shift my mindset and how I feel about myself. I think that's really
Mhm.
important nowadays.
Yeah. I remember like when my children, especially like Rio, my youngest, he's very sensitive to lots of stuff, and he would come home from school. Oh, I only got 5 out of my spellings today and I didn't do very well. And he'd be really upset about it. And I'd go, okay, I know this all of, if you've had one bit of disappointment, you need 7 positives to counteract it. That's the balance in order to neutralise that feeling. So I'd go, okay, well, let's talk about 7 brilliant things that you did today. Never did I do that to myself. And that would be one piece of advice I would give to all mums now, in that moment where you have that thought of, I'm not good enough. Like when I was a bit more resilient when I was in my 20s, but when I had Henny and Rio, I would beat myself up if I hadn't done something particularly well, or what, as a parent, I felt. They wouldn't go, but you're doing this brilliant test and that brilliant, and you're a really good mum. I would just focus on that one thing that I hadn't done as well. And there
Mhm.
were other factors going on in my world at the time, stresses from work that added into that. But we are so poor as self appraisals for ourselves. And
Yeah.
actually, if it was a gift I could give to every mum, that would be what I would be going. I have a little gift for you. That when you have a bad day, it opens up, this little box opens up, and a voice says, "You're amazing. You got up today and you tidied the house and you cooked a dinner for your baby and you did it." I think as women, we need to be doing a lot more of that together with each other.
Very much so, seeing the beauty in each one of us and celebrating that and thinking each other's great.
Our first meeting, Liz, I can't tell you how uplifting that was for the rest of my day. The power of those simple little things where we met, we'd never met, we went, we had a walk, and the impact. But you sending that message out in the morning to that group what an huge impact and a massive impact that had on so many people, not just myself. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it was that I took that away and I've applied it to my life. It's something I say to people now when they're kind of upset. Do you need a hug? Do you want me to come and give you a hug?
I
So,
love
and we should be celebrating these things. You're an amazing woman. You really are. You brought joy into my world in such a short period of time. Love the work that you're doing, working with the adolescents and the teenagers. And I know you say you work with adults as well. And if I have any women that I feel need a bit of help and support with you, it'd be like, I know this amazing woman. I've got to see her because she brings joy into your life.
Oh, bless you, Tess. Thank you. And it is one of those coincidences that aren't coincidences. Something that I'm trying to align myself more with. Listen to my intuition and go with it. So that morning, it really was kind of like I didn't have any premeditation to it. Just woke up like, I'm just going to do this, send the texts out to strangers. And it's, out of my comfort zone. But actually, the more I'm doing that, I'm recognizing that actually there's good that comes out of that. Initially, I am out of my comfort zone, but actually the connections that I get to have with people, with letting go of my own perfectionistic outlook and just be like, okay, I'm trusting in my ability to put a smile on my face and be welcoming, come what may. And that just practicing that is really kind of transforming my life, as it were. And so it's great. It's great. And the great connections. And it's not just for the other person because you get back as well, right? So it just spreads joy and love.
And you know me, I am the big love energy. Oh, so if there's anything else that you would like to talk about, the stuff that you're doing, what you do in your day to day life now, that would be amazing, just so that we can catch up with who Liz is today. We've done her whole journey, and today this is where she sits in her world.
Today I am working with young people who might have autism or ADHD. They don't necessarily settle into mainstream schools, so I get to spend time with them out and about in the community, kind of working on social skills, emotional skills, building trust relationships to kind of boost their self-esteem. And so over time, it's quite incredible to see how these relationships build and with an aim to either get them ready to go into the workforce or sometimes be placed into back into school or into another school that might be more appropriate to their needs. And I think I've been doing that for, I guess maybe the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years, 6 years. And then for the last three and a bit years, I've got a private practice, a psychotherapy practice, and I'm mobile. So I either see people in their home or online, which actually works for people instead of having to travel. I did used to have an office in Brixham, but decided to leave that and just do what I'm doing. And so that's a part of my business that I'm growing at the moment. And then I've also got a program that I'm doing. It's about to be launched called Wired for Better, and that's looking at the psychological approach that we have towards physical fitness and looking at kind of things that hold us back. So might be stress, our stress signature. So like how unique we all are and how stress can influence how we view and take care of our bodies. Self-sabotage. Once again, how our previous experiences and fear of judgment can influence how we approach fitness. Also looks at the reticular activating system, a part of our brain that we can activate to help us to look for ways to improve our fitness so we can actually actively help ourselves. And then also looking at self-esteem and how we can bolster our self-esteem regardless of the level of fitness that we're in. So that's quite a fun little kind of venture that I'm doing. It's a slightly different angle to the postnatal depression, to the autism, um, and the private psychotherapy practice that I've got. But it's something that is very personal to me because I'm constantly thinking and kind of, and I enjoy the kind of being physically active. So just looking at the barriers and seeing if I can help people from that perspective as well. So yeah, lots of different facets to my life at the moment.
Yeah, it sounds incredible, and I do actually think that links quite a lot in with postnatal depression and
Mm.
motivation for women. I think when you transition from being the woman you kind of think you know, as you said, you think you know, and then into motherhood, who you certainly don't know who that person's going to be, that a whole load of you gets shredded away. And even more so if your journey into that transition has been quite treacherous, you kind of almost lose a complete identity of whom you are.
Yeah, it's actually the way that I see it as well is it's like a process of grief as well, like because you think you know who you are, but then you're having to let go of that person in order to transition into motherhood. So there's an element of grief with the life change, and then you're growing and changing and shifting along with your child, and then sometimes with the focus being so much on your children, you do lose that sense of identity once again. um, and then as your children get older, then you're having to shift once again of kind of like, oh, I'm not needed so much anymore. So what does that mean for me? Who am I? So once again, that life change and a level of grief goes on within that as well, because you're having to let go of, kind of parental control, as it were. And so what does that actually look like? And it can feel a little bit sad because you gained a level of identity as a mom, and now you're kind of coming back into like, well, where do I stand within all of this now? So in order to kind of fully embody, I suppose, each stage of life, it's helpful to grieve and to let go and to then reevaluate and relook at what's best for you in now, in the present moment. So yeah, it's a real life change, life progress, as it were.
Liz, it's been an absolute pleasure having you and talking. I just love the way, I mean, as I've said, we've only met a few times, but our conversations are just so flowy and beautiful. And yeah, I just learn so much when I speak with you. And I just love the joy that you bring. You've got a wonderful smile, I have to say. It is, it just lights up a room. It's amazing. So it's lovely to have you on. And I'm sure that our next stage of our journey is going to be equally as um, joyous, and how we can work together and support each other, because I'm looking forward to seeing where we can connect in that aspect. So, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your personal journey sharing and your insights. I've taken some real gems away from there about navigating motherhood, and you've given me some things that I'm able to share with mums as well. So I thank you for that.
Oh,
You're a
pleasure.
superstar.